Queensland women's representative number 12 is Veronica White. Veronica's role in rugby league in Australia cannot be underestimated. Veronica played for Queensland in the first interstate game against New South Wales before playing 16 tests for Australia over a 9-year period after making her debut in 1995. Veronica represented Australia at 2 World Cups in 2000 and 2003, but arguably her greatest influence on the game has come off the field. A former president of the Australian Women's Rugby League, Veronica was the first woman to become a life member and was an integral part in developing the women's interstate competition back in 1999, which is now known as State of Origin. Ahead of her time, Veronica pushed for a national women's competition to be formed back in the 1990s. So highly thought of in the game, the NRLW player considered to have had the most impact on their community is awarded the Veronica White Medal. In August of 2024, Veronica White became inductee number 130 into the NRL Hall of Fame. Well, Veronica White, thank you so much for your time. What does it mean to you when you walk into FOG's HQ and you see a board with your name on it alongside some of the greatest women players in the game, but also alongside some of the greatest men to have ever played the game? What's your reaction when you walk through those doors?
Yeah, I often think, well, what did I do that was so amazing? To actually be seated, I guess, and considered alongside the greats of the game. But I'm pretty honoured and pretty humble especially with the women that I've played alongside and against, to actually be recognised after all this time. It's pretty special.
I'll ask you a similar question I've asked, Tani Norris and Karen Murphy and Steph Hancock, etc. Maybe the younger ones less so, but certainly people like you that have been there from the start. Did you ever think, you might have hoped, but did you ever think you would play a test match for Australian Rugby League, play for your state and play in a competitive environment?
If I'm going back to when I was a teenager,
young girl.
Yeah, probably. No, never. Because girls didn't play rugby league. We'd always seen the boys and the men play. Our brothers played, our uncles played, but I never thought. I thought the only footy that we'd be playing would be like in the backyard or something. So to actually contribute to that change is pretty awesome to be a part of that. So.
Take us back to that time when you had the opportunity for the first time. How did it come about?
It was back in 95. We had national championships every year. I'd only just been playing a couple years, and we'd had like regional teams which were selected. 95, where I'm just trying to think where we were playing at, where the nationals were at that particular year. And to actually have, we had 1993, which was like a foundation team, and they went to Fiji and played a couple of tests. But in 95, it was sort of the first official Australian test match against the Kiwi Ferns. And I don't know, I think like the bunch of girls that were selected, they were the best girls that have been performing over the tournament. And yeah, I don't know, I didn't really think that I did anything special on the field, but obviously somebody thought I did. And it was a pretty auspicious occasion, I guess, to be part of that first.
A bit of a whirlwind, I suppose, too. But take us back to that first time you played your first game ever, when you realised that dream that you thought might have been unreachable, that you could actually play a game. You could actually play. What was that first one like?
Well, I actually travelled down to Sydney by myself. I told Mama I'm just going to drive in my little Datsun, drive down to Sydney, and stayed with a cousin, and came across an ad in the paper just looking for women who wanted to play in a little women's rugby league competition that was starting off down there. And I didn't know much about the rules. I just knew backyard footy, so to speak. So the first game, I think we played Blacktown Tigers or Wildcats, and I just kept running straight. So there was Jackie Raisin. She was a future Australian Gillaroo's player later on, and I just kept running straight into her, and she used to do shoulder charges every single time. So I always came off second best, and then so I wasn't really enjoying the game very much at all in the first half. I came off at half time like, oh, why am I playing this game? Like I'm just getting smashed to pieces. And then the coach just said, well, why don't you try like running around her? And I actually scored a couple tries. So from there, I just got hooked, and I wanted to try and encourage as many women and girls to be part of it. So yeah, that was I just got hooked into it from then at that point onwards, and to play competition against all different levels of players was, I guess helped me develop the player that I became. So yeah.
Well, do you remember that coach? Because listening to that story, if he hadn't said that to you at half time and you continued to run straight and hard and get bashed, you may not have come back. Who was that person that, can you remember?
I can't even remember his name. He was a Middle Eastern young fella.
Yeah, great advice.
Yeah, and he was pretty sporty, like he was pretty fit. Used to do all his stretches before the game, and because we were just getting used to just playing any type of competition sport. We were like, oh, what's he doing stretches for? But he instilled that, I guess, that process and all that training into what we got used to, so that it became part of our regime and in our routine. And I'd have to say thank you for telling me to run around her instead, and actually make some yards, because I wasn't enjoying it at all. And of all people, Jackie is probably one of the best defenders out there. So at the time, and we became good friends after that.
So growing up back here in Brisbane, after before you went to Bankstown, 4 brothers and living near Lang Park, did you play in the backyard with them much? Were you able to do that, or did you not have a huge involvement with the game from the outside?
I guess with the having 4 brothers, they'd have a whinge to mum and say, oh, she's not going to come out and play footy. So
they wouldn't let you play.
No, they would let me play.
Oh,
They'd
they would
want me to play.
Oh, okay.
And whereas sometimes I didn't really want to play, but they taught me how to, I guess, handle the tough contact and all that. They used to do spear tackles on me and all that type of stuff, and thought it was fun. And I was like,
well, they're brothers. They're brothers.
Yeah, I know. So, but they taught me how to run hard, be able to handle getting tackled, being tackled, and all that type of stuff. And they taught me about, we used to have little community, little local neighbourhood games with all the neighbours and everything. We'd be smashing, or we'd be basically like a tribal warfare in the backyard, because it was a fairly big backyard. And then when the Brisbane competition, when men were playing out at Lang Park, we'd all head up there and, as I said, sneak through the fence on occasions and sit on the hill and just try and sprint alongside, because you could sprint down the side of the fence when the guys were running, and just run alongside them. So I really appreciate they always take credit for where I've come with the game, and now they say, you're in the Hall of Fame, that's because we taught you how to play. But I have to give them credit for that, because they taught me how to be a strong woman, I guess, in reality. And I had a strong mother as well, who's taught me to, never give up on stuff. And if the boys would give me a hard time, then I'd, try and give them back what they give me. So, the people in my life have been fairly strong influence on me.
So from the backyard in Brizzy to Bankstown v Wentworthville, second half in particular, all fun and games. When did it, I suppose, start getting serious for you? The realisation that there's interstate games that we could be playing, there's test matches, etc., and I'm going okay.
Well, my position was probably different to everybody else's, because I was administrating the game as well as playing, and that was always really challenging. So for me, I guess I found I really enjoyed providing for players rather than actually being a player myself. As much as people say, oh yeah, we're an awesome player and all that type of stuff, I actually really enjoyed making sure that the girls had opportunities to play. So the idea around the interstate, well, what we know as the State of Origin came about because we're the Australian Women's Rugby League. We didn't have Queensland or New South Wales Women's Rugby League, so we had to establish those bodies first. So over the course of a couple of years, I think it was 97, 98, we had tried to affiliate with the ARL in 93 and 95, and then in 98 they finally came on board. Well, we came on board with them, and we had to establish the Queensland, New South Wales bodies. With that, my idea was, the boys are playing, New South Wales, Queensland, playing State of Origin, so how about we do that too? Because it's like the pinnacle of rugby league, basically, apart from playing for Australia. So the girls really need to have that opportunity to have the best players out there in the country or down the East Coast playing against each other. And we needed to sort of also streamline how we were doing our selections as well. So, yeah, that's how that sort of all came about. And from there, it became, as an administrator, I think I became more involved in that rather than what I could do.
So you saw your role more of establishing the game than playing in the game.
Yeah, I don't think I ever, a lot of us girls probably didn't really reach our potential in the game, either because we were administrating the game or whereas I would have liked, whereas I was more, okay, well, I've got to make sure the girls are playing, a full round of competition games or making sure they've got footballs or making sure they've got a field to play at, all that type of stuff. So that was probably more important to me than me making sure that I'm playing at my top level footy. So it was a bit of a sacrifice, I guess, and but I wasn't the only one. There was other girls that were in the same boat as me.
Was it welcome by administrators to have some women knocking on doors and pushing for a competition?
I think for quite a while it was always pretty challenging. So you had this amazing sport which had been played by the men, or only by boys and men, and they made this sport that everybody wanted to be involved in, wanted to actually play, and to have a bunch of women come along and say, hey, we want to play too, it was probably took them by surprise, I guess, and there was a little bit of tension. The girls are coming into our space, and but I think the persistence that we showed, and especially when we played the game and played it really as passionately as how the guys play it, I think they sort of realised that we weren't going anywhere. So, let's make room. And there's probably still people there that probably don't think girls should play, but it's not going anywhere. I think it's moving a lot faster than what people think.
Is it moving faster than what you thought?
Oh, absolutely. I remember in 96 we did a survey of our Australian rep players. We asked them, hey, so, when do you think we could get like a State of Origin series happening? And, some of them say, oh, no, it never happened, will never happen. When do you think we could have a national women's rugby league competition? Oh, never, were some responses. But there was the odd, optimist in there. And I'm pretty optimistic with whatever thing you throw at me. I'll always find a positive in it. So there's a few girls there said, oh yeah, maybe 20 years, maybe 20, 30 years, maybe not in my lifetime, but it's actually moved much faster than what we thought, especially with the NRL right behind the competition. And there's so many girls that just want to be a part of it, and there's so much more support out there from parents, families, coaches, trainers, clubs, everyone. So it's great to see. Like, it's pretty awesome.
Can you quantify it? If we had a scale of 0 to 100 with, say, for example, when you started back in the Interstate series to where we are now, with 0 being where you started and 100 being the maximum, where in between 0 and 100 do you think the women's game is now? In terms of the potential it has? Yeah,
I think we're still a fairly young sport. So to where it could possibly be, I'd probably say we're probably around the 60 to 70 mark, maybe not even quite that much. I think, the boys, if I look at it this way, I'll give you a comparison. So the Australian schoolboys representative team, they've been around for 52 years. The Australian schoolgirls team, they've only had 2 years of being selected. So there's only been 2 years that they've had an Australian schoolgirls team. So, where there's probably about 70 years where we haven't had any competition between women, in the space from 1921 to where we are now, and going back to 95 when we had the Interstate Challenge. So we are a pretty young sport. There's still pathways still getting developed and being established, and especially in the school space, which I think is nowhere near where it can be. So I think there's a lot more that the women's game has to offer, and I can't wait where it gets to the stage where I think the boys are at the moment.
Yeah, I think that's the key, and I think it's about 50%, to be honest, because once that pathway is established, and once girls can play from the age of 5 like the boys, and they have that grounding, because as you well know, and we've discussed this with some of the other women players, you weren't allowed to play in key development years, those young teens and into 17, 18, etc. And so the sky is really the limit, Veronica, isn't it?
Yeah, it is, and we've been just looking at around the 13, 14-year age group. The skill level in terms of how they pass and catch the ball was nothing probably over maybe 5 years ago, maybe even 3 years ago. But you can start seeing some of that talent coming through now in those year levels. But as I said, even the girls at NRLW level, they're still learning their craft. They're still learning the game. They're still learning the rules, some of them. So, and you do have girls coming over from all different sports. You would love to make sure that you keep them playing rugby league. But as I said, the sky's the limit. You just don't know where it could end up. And obviously we want the girls to be, they're not even training full time. They don't have full-time jobs in rugby league. So imagine when they actually get paid as full-time employees, playing the sport that they love, then just see where that can take them.
Take us back to your playing days. Are you the only person in Australian sporting history to have sung the national anthem before playing in a test match?
Yeah, it's quite funny because the girls didn't necessarily, they hadn't had an Australian Rugby League women's team before. They probably didn't know all the words. I was learning the words. And because I was born in New Zealand, my mum's Māori, so obviously a lot of the Kiwi fans recognise me. As my physical appearance is, I look Māori, but I've been here since I was 2 years of age. So I always say g'day to them. They go, "What, don't you say kia ora?" And I said, "No, I just say g'day." But so when I used to sing the national anthem before the game, I'd be in my playing kit, and then I'd run out onto the field, and they just about knocked my head off because I've just sung the Australian national anthem. But my dad's Aussie, so it's quite I was anxious enough trying to remember, just make sure I sang the right words, and then to have to go out on the field,
concentrate on the test match,
catch the ball, because the ball generally they would just kick it to me as a second rower. It just happened to fall in my arms, or Murph will pass me the ball onto me, and then I'd be the one taking the first hit up, so I'd be the one that'd be absolutely copying it, especially if it was against the Ferns. They just hated me singing that one. But it was the girls loved me singing it, because I guess I sang it with a lot of passion and a lot of power, and if that motivated them a bit more before kick-off, then I was happy to do that.
Times have changed with the NRLW and live television coverage and clubs having their own teams, etc. Spoken to some of the girls about the difficulties of the early days, staying at the Backpackers at the West End and wearing Burleigh jerseys because there were no Queensland jerseys, etc. What are your memories of those tough times, and how did those tough times help you as an administrator in learning what you needed to do to make the game more better accepted by the girls?
Yeah, I guess there was obviously the challenges politically, making sure that we had support from the league hierarchy, and there's some old traditional people in there who are stuck in there with their values and stuff, but we had to persevere and sort of change their perception about what they thought about us coming into their space. And I'm really appreciative of the fact that they did allow us to come into their space, because they certainly could have just said, no, that's never going to happen. So that was always a challenge. Some other aspects were insurance companies always thought that, they wouldn't insure us because they thought we were at greater risk of getting injuries in comparison to other boys. And, sports, the people that make all the gear, they only made men's jerseys. They didn't make women's gear. So it was, I guess we were, bringing this new innovation to the sporting industry at all different levels, because one, they had to start changing the way that they made the gear. Insurance companies had to listen. Okay, we've got there's no greater risk as to us playing in comparison to the boys. And then it facilitated a lot of change. Some of the language that we use in the boardroom, probably can't say some of the things that you used to say back then. So, there's women in the room, and you need to be a bit more inclusive. So, but that was nothing probably in comparison to, when you look at it, some of our Indigenous players. And you're talking about a time not so long ago where, just having an Indigenous person in the room, people like, why are they in here? And I had my Indigenous mates. Not only were they Indigenous, they were female, and they were also playing rugby league. So there was a threefold against them, and so some of the challenges we had was nothing in comparison to what they had. So I really value in my friendship with my Indigenous mates, because they're a lot stronger than what I think I am, or any of us for that matter. But in terms of all the challenges that we faced, or what I faced as a player, as an administrator, alongside all the other women that have been there before, there's also the blokes that actually helped us. They copped it as well. Like, why are you coaching a female team? Can't you coach the blokes teams? And so they probably copped a few of those things too. And it wasn't great. Like, there were times where you thought, why am I doing this? What purpose am I trying to do? But then you'd see the girls out running and enjoying themselves and socialising, and I figured that's way better than anything that I'm ever experiencing. So, so I'd say whatever contribution I made, hopefully it's come out on the right side of the
It's come out okay, because the first life member of the Australian Women's Rugby League, the medal for who does the most in the NRLW in their community is named after you. The men have the Ken Stephen medal. There's now the Veronica White medal, which must give you a great sense of pride, not only to have a medal named after yourself, but for the reason it's named, what the player wins it for is outstanding. And then, of course, in August of 2024, Hall of Fame number 130. It's been an extraordinary journey, Veronica. Can you still believe it?
I saw a missed call on my phone at the time, and I was like, who's this ringing me up? But then there was a message from Graham. I thought, Graham's giving me a call. That's pretty special. I thought that's pretty cool, just getting a phone call from Graham Ainsley. And but I always, as I said, and I guess the other girls have probably said the same thing too. We never thought that some of the things that we were doing would get the acknowledgement that we get right now, and to go into the Hall of Fame, I still got to pinch myself, because I don't really understand what all the fuss about what we did, but at the same time I really do appreciate where the game is now, and I figured I must have done something pretty good to get there.
Who's had the biggest influence on your career?
I guess, obviously my mum. We lost our mum around the same time where I was hitting, the representative scene, and I ended up retiring from the game because of how how we lost our mum. She's always been a really strong influence on all of us kids, a big family. She always held the 4 boys in line, and she always encouraged me to do the best I could with whatever I put my mind to, so not to give up on anything. So if somebody said to me, oh, well, you know, you're not playing football, you're not playing rugby league, I'd do the complete opposite and say, well, yeah, we are. So, yeah, she's pretty, and always will be, quite a strong influence on me. And I hope to sort of keep that legacy alive. And I think for a lot of girls that play the game, even boys that play the game, just looking at the Hall of Fame presentation, the boys spoke a bit about their mum or their grandmother and how influential they are, and how they encourage them to do what they do and support them with everything. So I think having a female role model there is really important to our younger girls. But other than that, you know, obviously, well, just looking at all the girls out there playing today, they're upholding the legacy of the Gillaroos legacy or the Maroons girls legacy, so, or even New South Wales legacy as well. All those girls that played before them, they're sort of my role models. I just see them out there being strong women and pretty vocal. I love watching Julia Robinson give the trolls and all of them a ribbing, you know, if they say something about her, or, you know, even like you read comments and how they have to put up with some of the comments that's on social media. So the fact that they actually are strong enough to actually be confident and strong enough to say something rather than just be silent and let it happen, like that's I look at them as my role models, like, you know.
How do you reckon that young girl running up and down the sideline at Lang Park after breaking in, or the young girl at Davies Park would have reacted if someone would have said all those years ago, Veronica, you're going to play for Queensland and for New South Wales, you're going to play for your country, Australia, you're going to sing the national anthem before the test, but you're also going to have a medal named after you, and you're going to be in the Rugby League Hall of Fame. What do you reckon your reaction would have been in those days?
If I was a teenager, if let's just say I was 12, I'd probably think he'd come from a funny farm or something. If I was in my 20s, I probably would have said he's been drinking up on the hill for too much. But I would never have even, I had nothing like that even came into my mind that would ever be possible. But I think now that those things are in place, certainly gives young girls an opportunity to see what they're quite capable of, what they can do in rugby league now. Whether it's a commentator or a referee or a player or a representative player, or even a Hall of Famer. So if they can see that there are women there, then maybe they can aspire to do those types of things. So it's pretty awesome. Yeah, but I wouldn't have thought of it at the time. I don't know what I was thinking of. I wasn't, maybe just trying to get to school on time probably in my teens.
Well, Veronica White, thank you so much for your time. Congratulations on a wonderful career, and also thank you for what you've done for the game of rugby league. No,
thanks very much. And I can't wait to see where the game takes us. Like, I can't wait to see all those younger girls. Tomorrow I'm watching the National Schoolgirls Cup, girls that I've been teaching since grade 7. Going out there to give it their all, and they, just to see that they actually have that opportunity now, that's fantastic to see. So thank you for having me here today.
Thanks for watching this episode of the FOG's Queenslander podcast. If there's a FOG you want to hear from, leave a comment to let us know. And don't forget to like and subscribe so you don't miss any of our videos.